Welcome back to Be the Trader. This is Alex, and today was a good day, and not because I took a loss. If you listen to yesterday's episode, I talk about how it was a good day and I had a small loss, half R if I remember. But today I actually had a pretty good trade, had a good gain, and I'm excited about it, and I want to talk about it. Today I got better than yesterday. And that's what I'm focusing on right now in this season of my journey, is focusing on how can I get better from my previous self, from yesterday. And yesterday, if you remember, if you haven't listened to that episode, and don't forget, like and subscribe to this channel if you're watching on YouTube or listening on podcasts. Definitely leave a rating and a review. It helps me a lot, especially since this is a new show. That being said, yesterday I was talking about how I missed an opportunity that was my setup, but it's because it was a low float stock. I can't remember if it was SAEX. It was a low float stock, 3.3 million. I knew it was going to be rotating its float. And I didn't look to borrow until near the open, so I missed out. And that thing just tanked. And I might be confusing that one with another stock, but the point is, I missed out because I didn't borrow ahead of time. And today, CGIX, it is a low float stock. It actually is, let me check right here, 1.6 million float. It has a news, which I don't really care what the news is specifically, but it also has tons of warrants. If you look in the SEC filings, I like to use BAMSEC, BAMSEC. Really like that website. It breaks it down for me very easily to read. Just take some time to learn. But I found out this has warrants. It's a super low float, and I knew for a fact it was going to rotate its float because it was already trading almost, I think, at half when I noticed it in the pre-market. And so this time I said, you know what? I'm going to borrow and pay for these shares right now. And so I borrowed shares. I think it cost me like 8 cents a share, and that sucks, but it's not that big of a deal. But here's the thing. I had to borrow now, not knowing if I could actually trade it after all, because I don't like to trade these low floats in the morning because the odds are not in my side. And I'm actually going to do a whole trade review of this trade and post it on YouTube as well. So I'll be able to go into the details and show you the chart. But for those who are listening, low floats tend to be radical. They go up and down, and they're irrational. It's all emotion. One moment it's at $2, the next moment maybe it's at $7, and the next it's at $2.50, then $7. It's just crazy. And so because of that, I can't handle that kind of volatility, so I just don't mess with it. But I have discovered a trade that works really well for me in the afternoon, and it worked today very well. And I actually traded it wrong at first and took a small 1R loss and then made a 3.2R, I guess you would say, or 3R. 3R is more safe to say, gain on it overall, which is super awesome. And just to explain what I really picked up here on this trade is, number one, I waited. I waited to the very end of the day, not knowing for a fact, am I going to be able to trade this or am I not? And then I was willing, I'm proud that I was willing to wait till the end of the day, possibly already paying for the borrows and not even trading it. I mean, at the open, this thing tanked. I mean, it tanked from, I believe it was, I'm looking at the chart, 650 straight down to below 475, sorry, that area. And I thought I missed it, and I was so frustrated, but I also told myself, don't worry. Your plan is the afternoon. These are super low flows. They could squeeze. There's a chance it could squeeze everyone and then build for the whole day and consolidate and then break down. And that's exactly what it did. It actually consolidated between 6 and 7, pretty much all midday afternoon. And then right before it crashed, it actually had a perk in volume. Volume was a huge key for me. It had a pretty good perk in volume. Spiked up, touched 7, the top of the range, and then started tanking with volume. And I started to get short. and I got full size a little too quick. Well, actually, I got more than full size, 2/3 size, at a good average around, I think it was $6, and it went down to $5.50. And I told myself if it breaks $5.50, I'm adding another third. Now, one thing I'm going to learn from this is if it's dropping completely from 7 to 5, to $5.50 in hindsight, and when I say that out loud, obviously you don't want to just chase it, which my first entry wasn't. I was happy with that. I was comfortable with that, especially if it spiked back up. I was okay. But when I added that third size and at the low, pretty much $5.50, it brought my average down to $5.80 full size, and I wasn't comfortable with the spike that it gave me. It spiked up past 6, which was VWAP was $5.90, and it hit like $6.19. I actually stopped out right up around that area, maybe $6.15. And then it rejected. And I told myself, look, one of my rules is not jump right back in, especially if it hits my risk when I know I'm wrong. But in this case, that risk was more of an arbitrary number because I wasn't comfortable adding at the bottom of that tank, right? So in hindsight, or after I took that loss, I realized that this is a perfect place to add, and this is where I want to add. So in this case, I want a short. So I took actually full size position, 2/3, and then added after about several minutes went by, and it tanked again, or was looking weak, about to tank, kind of faded, and then had a weak bounce. I added into that bounce, had a better average of $5.91. Now, what I was really happy about is I didn't let my previous trade affect my current trade. Now, don't get me wrong, it made several attempts to affect me. Excuse me. But I kept telling myself the only reason I want to take profits is because of my last trade. That's the only reason. What's the chart showing me? Is it showing me weakness? Is it showing me that I'm on the right side of the trend? Is this my setup? Is everything setting up correctly? And I kept saying yes. And if it got to a point where it was a key level that I had to take profits, I would. Like when it hit 5 again, actually it hit 5 and I had an average of $5.90. I covered 1/3. And then it bounced from there. And I was kind of upset, and I almost covered up in the 550s. And I said, you know what? The only reason I want to cover here is because I'm uncomfortable, because I took a loss, and now I made that back on my first 1/3 cover, which is awesome. You take a 1 hour loss, you only cover 1/3 of a position, you cover that loss. Great risk reward. I'm happy about that. But then I was thinking, I don't want to take a loss period, and that's the only reason I wanted to cover. And so I said, you know what? Nope, I'm going to wait. If I am going to cover anything, it's going to be when it attempts to break the low of day. And it actually attempted to break that not once, but twice. The first time it jumped down to like 512, but immediately spiked. And I thought about covering, but I said, no, it's still downtrending. It hasn't set higher highs. This may be a higher low, but there's no confirmation yet. And I'm glad I didn't cover there, because if I would have covered, it wouldn't have been at 512. I would have been chasing the 535, 540s, because this thing moves quickly. So waiting another 20 minutes, it actually went all the way back down to 5. I covered another third at 510, I believe. And then I covered the remaining third at 480, which I'm pretty stoked about. I traded it very well, which I'm happy about. And it's all came down to having a plan and sticking to that plan. And I'm learning too that, you know what? If I would have never added that last third of my first entry when I was chasing, then, my neck's killing me. Then it would have been, I would have never took a loss. It would have been a really good trade, and I would have had a really good gain. But it's still a good lesson. I'm going to take that lesson away. I'm going to apply it to tomorrow. I'm also in a trade right now, MYOV. It's the first potential red day. It's looking weak. It has low volume. This thing spikes a lot. I mean, a ton. I think it was in the 6s the other day, and now it closed in the 14s, or it went up to like the 16s, closed in the 13s. Spiked this morning all pre-market and then failed, and today it's been fading all day with low volume and trending downward. So I'm staying in the trade. Right now, think I'm down like a few, maybe a half R, but I'm okay with that. And that's mainly because I like the setup. And I'm going to stick in it until my risk is hit or until my profit is hit. And so that's pretty much how today went. So I'm happy about that. I also got some good news. I'm going to be, knock on wood, I'm interviewing a trader who is successful at day trading. They do it for a living and they have a great story. They're going to be part of the show here soon. I don't want to name who it is just because you never know. People could back out. That's just how life is. But I'm excited. Hopefully it happens. And I hope this show, you're enjoying it. Don't forget to subscribe, share it with your friends. And thanks again for tuning in. And don't forget to subscribe or check us out on YouTube and podcasts, depending on where you're watching this.